All right, our next storyteller is Miss Jacqueline Ware. Jay Ware was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest. Poet, spoken word artist, and recent playwright, she is drawn to material that taps into social justice and injustice issues. With a heart for children and seniors, Jay writes stories and prose geared toward their age range. Access to Jay's children's videos can be found on YouTube. Pop-Up Time, Children's Poetry and Prose. She is a member artist with the 4Culture Touring Arts roster and has a short on-location stage play titled Madison Park Bench, located on YouTube. Minerva Labs. She has performed at town hall, libraries, museums, on Orca and Vashon Island, schools, bookstores, and art galleries. Jay says, spread honesty liberally. Miss Jay.
Thank you. It kind of looks like my screen is freezing up a little bit. Does it look like that to you? I hope not.
A little bit, but your voice is fine, so go ahead.
All right, I will keep going then. So I'm just going to tell you right off the top of my head, I didn't even write it down, about some of the experiences I had growing up in Tacoma, Washington, right down the street. So up until I was in the 4th grade, I was raised in a neighborhood where, and I'm going to use the language we used at the time, there were whites, Caucasian whites, African-American Blacks, Indigenous people, Indians. They were called Indians. So we all grew up together. It was wonderful. Remember I said up until I was in the 4th grade. And so I don't recall at that time, at that age range, I don't recall racism, bigotry, prejudice, only what I saw on television. And I never wanted to go to the South because of what I saw on television. And I could not understand for the life of me why people couldn't get along, why there was so much conflict and so much fighting, why there were dogs and hoses and why there were lynchings and hangings. It was just mind-boggling to me why the schools were separate, why Black kids were in certain schools and couldn't go to school with white kids, because I did. I went to school with white kids. I went to school with Native Americans. So my mother's family was from Arkansas, and I've never understood, my father and my mother are both deceased. I never understood why they never wanted to talk about the South, never wanted to talk about what they endured, what they went through, the good, bad, the ugly, never wanted to discuss it. My father is half Native American. And so I never met my grandmother, his mother. She died when she was really young. But my father was super quiet. And as I said, we were raised around Native Americans, the Puyallup tribe. My father was very, very quiet, but he was extremely talented. But when I was little, I thought every father did what he did. So my father could knit, my father could crochet, he taught himself how to play the piano, he could cook, he could carve, he was a whittler, he made our purses, he made some of our shoes that we would not wear, but he could make them. So he worked with leather, he canned the food, and he was not the disciplinarian. So my mother was the disciplinarian, and she was quite the disciplinarian. So regarding my father, it was just interesting to me that, as I mentioned before, we thought all fathers did the same thing that he did. I had an uncle that also lived in the neighborhood in Tacoma, and he was also very gifted, very talented. My father could, and he did too. He could take things apart. He would take the television apart so he could figure out how to put it back together, figure out how it worked, and he could do it and put it back together. He could fix virtually anything. And so, I had a brother that ended up with some of the same skills and abilities that he did. Not me. I really wish I had. But unfortunately, I was not gifted with those types of skills and talents and abilities. So that was my dad, really quiet. And he would be sitting down whittling a wood. And I have in my home now, you know, as I got older, he passed away. And as I got older, we kept a few of his things, but not very many. Because he didn't seem to take a lot of interest in what he did because it was just natural for him to do it. So I do have a totem pole that he made. I have a couple of tables that he made, and they're perfect. My grandmother also, and I'm going to read a story about grandmothers in a minute. This is a story that I wrote. This is not about my grandmother, but it's about a grandmother and her grandbaby. So my grandmother was also part Native American. She had long gray and white hair. So, you know, what I remember from my grandmother is when my grandmother was a grandmother. I don't remember anything young about her. And my grandmother could sew. Oh my God. Now we're not talking about a sewing machine, but when I was young, I just kind of took that stuff for granted. So I encourage everyone, you know, if your grandparents are around, your parents are around, there's things that you want to know, things that you've thought about, would be interesting to know, would be beneficial to you. Do it now, do it now, do it now. So anyway, my grandmother could really, really sew. And I have an apron that she made because I just couldn't believe she made that apron by hand. Oh my God. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect. All the stitching is perfect. So anyway, and my grandmother loved to cook. And one thing that I hated, and I didn't want to be rude or disrespectful or anything, but I hate dumplings. I hate dumplings to this day. And so my grandmother would make dumplings, and of course I'm doing everything I can to eat around the dumpling. I don't like anything wet like that. Or she would make hot water cornbread, and a lot of people like hot water cornbread. I don't like hot water cornbread. And so I just don't like it all mushy inside. And so then I would just kind of eat around the outside, the edge is kind of crunchy and things like that. But this is one thing that I wanted to tell you about my father. I was talking about my grandmother, but about my father, who was so incredibly gifted. But I also said that he was really, really quiet. And so he would tell us a little thing, just little things about when he was growing up. And what they had, his mother had, when he was really small, was some sort of a statue, the bust of a woman. And they would, I don't know why, and we didn't ask the question, but sometimes they would use that as a way to comfort themselves. So with that breast of that woman, they would use that as to actually as a suckling. It was really fascinating. So now you wonder, well, if my dad does all that, what did my mother do? My mother cooked, and she was the disciplinarian, as I said, and she also made the best sweet potato pies. I'm like, who does that? I can't make them like her. And even though I've tried, and it takes a little extra work and effort to do that, but her sweet pies were so light and airy. And the way she whipped the egg white, that egg white, if you cook it just right in the sweet potato pie, when you cut a slice, it would have that line of egg white going through. It was just really, really, really fascinating. So yeah, she was the disciplinarian. They're from Arkansas. I was in my mother's tummy when we came to the state of Washington. Now, about grandparents. I think grandparents are hugely important. If they can be available in your life, they are hugely important because they're part of your upbringing and your discipline and just helping you understand yourself better and just being an integral part of that family. Grandparents are invaluable. With that, I'm going to tell you a story that I wrote. So that's about my family. There's a lot more I could tell you, but I'm going to leave it at that. Oh, yeah. What am I talking about? All right. I said up until the 4th grade. So we were in a car accident, and my father got some money. Of course, if he had not been Black, his lawyer, I found out later, told him, I could have got you $1 million. Okay, well, now I'm learning about some racism right there. So anyway, he got some money and we moved to a different neighborhood. Now, it wasn't that far away, but it was just us in this neighborhood. So you talk about culture shock, it was culture shock. But because up until the 4th grade, I had been raised in a very integrated neighborhood, I was very confident in myself. I felt really comfortable when I went into that classroom and all eyes were on me. I thought, why are they looking at me like I'm different? Like I'm looking at you like you're really different. And the things you don't know was incredible to me. But I had a wonderful teacher. Some things went on, some of the kids, they use that N-word, and I had not been called that N-word until I came to this neighborhood. And my mother went to that school, and that was back in the day when the teacher and the principal and the parents got together to resolve conflicts among the children. I don't know why they don't do that today, but they did it back then. And that child never called me the N-word again. As a matter of fact, we became friends and I beat the mess out of him in ping pong. So here is a story that I wrote called Grandbaby and Me, because I'm running out of time. It's called Grandbaby and Me, Imaginary Friend, and I do a series of Grandbaby and Me. So here we go, real quick. Nana hollered from the kitchen for her grandbaby to come on downstairs. She was baking up a batch of her favorite chocolate chip cookies with walnuts and wheat germ. Not hearing the soft pounding of his small feet stumping down hard on each step, Nana called out one more time from the bottom of the stairs. Child, didn't you hear me calling you? Come on down here and help your Nana make these cookies. She hears the bedroom door open and her grandbaby shouts, Nana, I got company. We're busy playing. The door slammed shut. Oh no, he didn't just slam my door shut, thought Nana. She eyed the stairs wearily. Over the years, she must have climbed them 1,000 times, but today her knees were not in the mood. But no child of hers or grandbaby was going to be acting sassy, slamming doors in her house. So she slowly started walking up the steps, one step at a time, holding onto the banister for support. Finally reaching the top of the landing, Nana stood next to the guest bedroom door trying to catch her breath. She could hear talking coming from the other side of the door. Now, I know no one else can possibly be in that room, whispered Nana under her breath. After a moment, Nana's irritation and desire to set that record straight about slamming doors subsided. It occurred to her what was going on, and she chuckled, oh, that grandbaby of mine. She turns the knob and quietly opens the door. Peering inside, she looked around the room. His Power Rangers and dinosaurs were strewn all over the floor. He had so many toys in Nana's house. Her sweet, sweet grandbaby was sitting cross-legged with his back hunched over on the bed, looking hard at something in his hand. She could hear his muffled crying. What's wrong, baby? What you crying about? Nana said in a tender voice. Nana, he said, rubbing his eyes. I don't like her anymore. She being mean and stubborn. Oh, she is, replied Nana. Well, maybe she's just tired and has a lot on her mind. No, Nana, no. She's sounding frustrating. He started crying again. Oh, honey, Nana said, rubbing his back. I doubt that. Everyone wants a friend just like you. Well, but she said, our title to my opinion. She kept saying that to me. I tell my opinion. Well, Nana replied, maybe she just needs time out. Let's leave her here for a while and we'll go finish making our cookies. Sometimes we all just need a short break. Okay, Nana. She might act better when she smells those cookies. Siri, you stay here and you think about how you've been acting sassy. We walk out and gently close the door. And that is the end of that story. Thank you so much. Thank you for